I don't like to interrupt the interviews, so here's a quick message before we get started. Do you organize conferences or trade shows? What if you could create fully branded name badges with unique QR codes in only 2 clicks, without a complex and expensive badge printing process that also includes on-site badging? What if your sponsors and exhibitors could download a smartphone app to scan badges and capture leads? No rented hardware or expensive on-site support, and real-time leads ready for import into their CRM systems. That's Curious. To learn more about the Curious smartphone-based lead retrieval, attendance tracking, and badging solutions, visit snapcapture.net. Welcome to the Event Tech Podcast, live coverage of Plannertech 2013 here at Convene in downtown New York City at 32 Old Slip. If you don't know where that is, look it up. That's what Google Maps is for. And I'm your host and executive producer, John Federico, which means that I'm the guy who turns the knobs and posts the shows. But the important person that we're talking with here today is Kristi Casey Sanders.
Thank you for saying that I'm an important person.
Well, you know, nobody wants to talk to Gadget Boy. They want to know the people Gadget Boy knows.
I want to talk to Gadget Boy.
Then you're in the right
thought
place.
you were one of the best speakers today, actually.
Well, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that. So, Kristi, your company is Plan Your Meetings. Mm-hmm. And your title, well, let's forget the title. Just the key piece of it was augmented reality.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I feel like we're talking sci-fi now. It's like, you know, we had a Google Glass presentation and now we have augmented reality. So tell us all about that. I want to hear about your presentation first and foremost, because number one, I missed it. Silly me. But also I want to go a little bit deeper, and I want to know how you're using it, and if you have any successful case studies to talk about.
Sure. So when I mentioned in the presentation, there are several different ways I was introduced to augmented reality. And for those of you who are listening who aren't quite sure what that is, augmented reality is basically an overlay over what you see. So a lot of times it is triggered by a location, or it's triggered by an image. The action that is triggered can be anything from a simple video playing to multiple calls to action. So, for example, if you went to it's called Issue. I say issuu because it's issuu.com /plan your meetings. You'll see that we have a digital edition. If you download an app, because you have to activate the triggers using an app. So whether it's Layar or whether it's Orasma or whether it's the Chick-fil-A Kids app, whatever it is.
Okay.
For us, the experiences that we code for our events and for our readers is through the PYM Plus app. Okay. So you would download that app, and then you would go to issuu.com /plan your meetings and just scan the cover, and you'll see all of a sudden all of the artwork start to drip off of the page. And then what starts to rain down are links to subscribe to Plan Your Meetings, to join our Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus communities, and see our videos on Vine and look at our Instagram pictures. And so that's the kind of thing that as an event organizer, you can start to code into your sponsors' logos. What's really interesting about image-based augmented reality is that that image acts as a trigger for the media, no matter where it appears. So, for example, if you took your Curious logo and you tied that to a green screen video of you explaining who you are and what you do, that experience would trigger that video. Like, whenever somebody saw that logo and scanned it with an app, like where that experience was coded. So like if you built it on Layar, people would have to download the Layar app and then whatever. So if somebody scanned that app, it didn't matter if it was coming through on a direct mail piece or on a bus stop or on a sticker on the subway or on their website, you know, desktop view or a trade show banner, that would still trigger the same interaction.
As long as the proper application is installed.
Yeah, as long as the proper application actions installed. So it's a really interesting way of being able to engage with people over multiple platforms. And what's really neat about it is, say you have a conference brochure, oh, hey, buy this sponsorship level and I'll put your logo in here and then we'll put it on all our email blasts and we'll do this and we'll do that. What's really neat is that with augmented reality, you can code content. So you can code multiple interactions and then give those sponsors reports. So say, okay, well, we know that at this trade show, 1,000 people interacted with your banner. And out of that 1,000 people, 300 people clicked the Facebook thing, 200 people sent calendar requests to add your salespeople to their calendar, 80 people sent emails to your sales team. It just gives you a richer amount of data that you can give your sponsors and your exhibitors about these interactions that people are having using things like print media, which has never really been trackable before.
Right.
And because you can tie different things like to a URL, you can add a referral code, and then people can see, oh, well, that's the value of my print buy, or that was the value of sponsoring this event. So that's image-based.
Let me hit the pause button right there. So let's break this down for a minute for people who don't, because I know a little bit about augmented reality. I know there's marker-based. I know about marker-based augmented reality, and that's where you have to have a specific. It used to be QR codes were used for that, and lots of other types of 2D images and that kind of thing.
So markers. So when I say image, that's basically marker-based. Yeah.
Okay, it's marker-based. So when you say augmented reality and you talk about applications, and by the way, I'm breaking this down because not to be pedantic, but because this is the Event Tech podcast, and so we get everyone saying, what registration system should I use for my event, all the way to augmented reality and that kind of stuff. So I want to try and bridge the gap here for those who have no idea what this means. So does that mean that as an organizer, I would have to select a whole different, yet another mobile app for my event? How does
yes
that
and
work?
no. So what we do at the PYM Live events, we've got 12 that we do across the country. We partner with Topi to be our mobile app this year.
Sure.
And they're actually here. And the reason why we chose them is because we have one-day events. They're happening in one room. There's no reason why we need an agenda-based app. Our point is that we were looking for something to connect people, and Topi actually allows you to see everybody who's at the event in order of relevancy to you, like how much you have in common with them.
Right.
And so we use Aurasma to code our experiences. And Aurasma has a simple API. And so I brought the API to the developers at Topi, and I said, hey, if you can make this happen, this would be really, really fantastic. How complex would it be? And they looked at it and they go, it looks pretty easy, and they ended up, it took 2 hours, they plugged it in, and you can actually, if you downloaded Topi and opened it right now, he created a Plannertech, and he put the PYM Plus button there just to show people how easy it is to kind of integrate augmented reality into a conference experience.
Okay.
So if you were at one of our events, then you would be able to use that PYM Plus app to scan our event logos that would trigger, videos that had different call to actions on them. If we had coded something here that was tied to maybe where the registration desk is, then people would be able to open up their app and trigger a geolocated experience where maybe Liz showed up in a 3D video and welcomed everybody, and then had multiple things they could push to share content with.
Okay.
So it's very easy. Like there are two ones that I would recommend to meeting planners who are interested in integrating this kind of technology. One is Aurasma, because Aurasma is open source. It's kind of like the Google of augmented reality.
Okay.
So anybody can register to be a designer, and then you get a channel. And so you can tie a channel to a skinned app, like the PYM Plus app for Apple and Android. It's just a skinned app. That's all it does. Now later we can build different versions on top of it that allow you to do other things, or it has different content. But right now it's just an augmented reality scanner. So we then took that API and integrated it into our existing conference app.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
So Aurasma is one. The other one that's easier for non-techie designers to design on is called Layar, and that's Layar. And that was actually the first augmented reality app that I saw used at a conference. And the way they used it is they geolocated map points. And so you downloaded that event channel. And then when you opened it up, if you panned around the room, it told you what sessions were happening where in the convention center. So it was used as kind of like a digital signpost. And so that way it would tell you how far away the rooms were. So if you're meeting somewhere like in this huge first-tier convention center where the kind of thing where you wish you had roller skates on your shoes because there's no way you're going to get from end to end in 10 minutes, that's a really easy way to help people navigate. And so Layar has the geolocation. It also has those marker-based experiences too. And the way you create them is pretty much the same for Layar as it is for Erasma. You basically just take a picture and then you drag whatever content or animations or interactions you want to happen, and you can divide an image into zones.
Okay.
And the camera reads it as black and white. So if you run a newsprint ad and it's black and white versus, the thing that's embroidered on your shirt, it would still trigger the same thing because the camera doesn't distinguish between the black.
So it's purely shape-based versus color.
But you have to kind of be careful because if you're not, like we had an event where we were going to be in a historical space and we wanted to show people what it looked like when it was a Macy's department store in 1929. And so I took a picture and I asked the event staff, I was like, okay, please, lighting the way that's going to be for the show. And they just couldn't get it right. They just, so I took a picture, I sent it, he coded it, it worked for the tech orientation, and then it stopped working for the second tech orientation because they had changed the lighting on me.
Couldn't recognize it.
Yeah. And so I was having trouble scanning some of the magazine layouts that I had in front of the room that, had downloadable PDFs and stuff just because there was glare from the overhead.
Sure.
And it was disrupting my image recognition. But yeah, I love playing with it. I love finding new applications for it. And what I love is that it's actually a trackable way of seeing how people engage with things that were pretty much just sedentary.
Sure.
So.
Absolutely. I mean, you might find marketers love it, right? You might find a few show organizers who are like, that's a little too much data. What if the numbers aren't good? There's always that.
There is always that.
But I think the more savvy folks would buy into it.
Well, I think it's also got that, it's basically like a QR code that interacts with you. So it can be anything. It can be, you can have headshots of your VIPs, you get headshots of your speakers, and the headshot could be the first frame of a video. So if you have them up in the lobby, you could scan this headshot of your speaker, and the speaker starts speaking to you about what they're going to be talking about in a half hour.
Right.
And then you can push a button on your phone that says, add this to your calendar. I mean, the applications are unlimited. One of the guys that we work with, because we do it not only for Plan Your Meetings, but also for Encore Atlanta, which is the arts organization. It's the publication for the major arts entities in Atlanta. And so we do theater programs. So if you went to issue.com/Encore Atlanta, you could scan the cover of the August issue, and on the marquee, it shows you all the shows they're playing. That's what the animation is.
Okay,
and then you can buy tickets and all that. But, the guy that developed that for us, and that's the Theater Plus Network app, he actually does this for theaters around the country. So you do have experiences where you go to the theater and you can scan someone's headshot on the wall and they tell you about why they love to play.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different applications for telling stories at your events.
I will say I love it, of course, but I'm Gadget Boy, okay? And so by definition, I'm an early adopter. We, in our business, we deal with things like QR codes. People don't even know what to do with those, right? So what's the adoption rate, really, for something like this at your average, your average conference, your average trade show? One that is not tech-oriented, like Plannertech.
That's hard for me to say because I know how many people download the app and the scanner's embedded in that.
Sure.
So, and we just launched the PYM Plus. So until I have my metrics for this last month, that was really the first month that the magazine was in circulation with the app. But it looks like right now about 20% of our audience is downloading it. I know from seeing what people have viewed online that we have 6 times the viewership in 1/6 the time that we normally do. So, typically we would have 2,000 views or impressions generated over a 12-month period. Well, there's almost 7,000 and it's only been up for a month and a half, 2 months.
Okay.
So I do think that it's something exciting. I think that there are certain things that people interact with more than others. But, because it is kind of new and shiny, it really kind of blew my mind the first time I got the stats back that people, like even things that are just ads that they know are just ads, and the ad experiences may not be that sophisticated because, we've got someone on staff who can create an animation that's got multiple layers and depth to it, and they may just stick up a video that's 8 minutes long and expect you to watch it and then click through their website.
Right.
So, even those though, like everybody, and we've seen this with the theater publication, they will look at every single ad in the book because each one is marked with an icon. Like they will go through and they'll be like, what's Lexus doing? Ooh, what's this? Even though they realize it's just because there's a curiosity thing, and because it's kind of magical, the camera doesn't obscure the fact that it's sitting in your lap. It doesn't obscure the fact that you can put your hands between it and the image. And so I think there's that fascination with it. Like in 2003, did you ever read Pattern Recognition by William Gibson?
I know of it.
That was the first introduction for me to augmented reality, or what we know as augmented reality. And the heroine put on a visor, and the visor allowed her to see 3D art installations. But, and that happens now. Like I was showing, I've got 2 Chick-fil-A comic books, and the Chick-fil-A Kids app, if you scan one, a cow pops up and it does something special. If you scan the other one, the cow pops up and does something special. If you put the magazines together and you scan both covers at once, 2 cows pop up and they do something completely different. So if you have a trade show and, each vendor has a token they're giving away, you can actually code the tokens to interact in a completely different way when they're scanned together than they do when they're scanned individually. And that, I think, is a really cool incentive to get people to, like, so much more interesting than a bingo card.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That just blows me away. So there's new and shiny, right?
Yeah.
And that's important, but there's also what do I want to say? There's also just human nature.
Yeah.
Right? So, we have conferences where people will ring us up and they'll say, "Do you work with flip phones?" And we say, "No," because we just don't. Like, it just doesn't work. Well, there's a large portion of our audience that still uses flip phones. Really? So these people will never, until they upgrade, until someone teaches them how to use a smartphone, they're lost to anything new like this.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to put myself in these people's shoes to say, are they going to use it? Like, what are the demographics of your early adopter?
Well, our theater-going audience tends to skew older, 45 to 65, and we've got more than probably 2,000 apps in circulation now on the theater side. So it's hard to say, but I would really caution yourself against. I do think there's definitely that concern about people who really choose to opt out of the system of the smartphones. Those people you're not going to get. My husband's one of them. He's just like, why do you want to have a computer in your pocket?
You do enough for both of them.
I do. Right? Yeah. I have to. It's enough that I have to program the flashing 12 on the VCR. He has to do something other than talk on the phone with his phone. So, but the most innovative people I've met in this industry aren't necessarily 20 years old. There are a lot of people who, building virtual convention centers and Second Life and stuff like that, who are, they're well into their baby boomer or even, greatest generation.
Yeah, for me, demographics, I guess, was a misnomer. For me, it's less about demographics, more about psychographics. It's more about what's the type of person? Age means nothing to me because I know people in their 60s who are coding Ruby on Rails.
Gotcha.
So that means nothing, right?
So then into that, I would say it's people who are curious, because what's really neat is that you can do things with augmented reality. You have multiple experiences, and so if you are limited by space, you're going to have a one-sheeter for this conference, whatever, but you want people to have multiple experiences, or you want to have multiple content, or you've got a story and you've only got room for 500 words. That's one thing we're going to be doing for the symphony this year. Is there's this guy, he loves writing 10-page synopsis of every concert, and they don't think people read it. So now it can be cut down to like a one-page synopsis, and when you scan it, he pops out in 3D and he tells you about it, and you can hear music from it, and you can see a slideshow, and so I think that it's people who are looking for richer experiences and who are curious. And I think that once you see it, it kind of is like that little popcorn. You're like, ooh, what else is here? Like, what else is hidden here? I think it creates that kind of excitement about things.
I can understand that because I feel that way right now. I'm like, give me one. I want to play with it.
I've got some in my bag, actually, but I don't think people will be able to see it.
All right. Well, maybe you'll let me explore later.
I will.
All right. Very interesting. I'm very excited about this, actually. So I guess what it boils down to me, just in terms of our business, is and the people we interact with. Mm-hmm. The theater goer, I could almost see. I picture myself at the theater. I picture others at the theater. We get there. You're a few minutes early. You've got the playbill. You've got the program. What does this do? And you've got a few minutes to kill, and I could see that as being an absolutely perfect use of this technology. Walking the floor of CES. Maybe not.
No, but imagine if you went into, if you had something here, and maybe 100 years ago, this is where people sold fish. Mm-hmm. You could actually code video of people selling fish, 100 years ago. So, during downtime or something, people could have this panoramic experience of seeing what the contextual history of the space was.
Using just geolocation.
And just 3D animation.
I love it. I'm fascinated. We could talk about this all day, actually. So, all right. So
I had 10 minutes.
Speaking of, tell us a little bit more about you and your journey and how you got to this place where you're playing with augmented reality.
Yeah, what's really funny is I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday, and we had come up through the UCB Theater, the original location in New York. And 10 years ago, we made a vow to each other that 10 years from now we'd see each other in Saturday Night Live, and he'd be a writer and I'd be one of the cast members. And it's very funny because our lives have taken two completely different trajectories. When I left, I went on to Boom Chicago Comedy Theater, which is based in Amsterdam. So I was under contract there for a year, and I did comedy, and I worked with Second City and all that kind of stuff. And I was there, Seth Meyers had just come out of it and started working for. So it was a launch pad. He was still with UCB and doing the kind of improv thing. And what's really funny is I ended up leaving that, deciding that I was maybe too well adjusted for comedy. and that I wasn't mentally broken enough. And I'm kind of a gold star kid. I like having achievable goals. And it was always really annoying that I'd do something like get to play Maggie the Cat in Cat in Hudson Roof, in New York, and get great reviews and be written up and be in the paper. And then nobody gave a shit the next day. So it was just kind of a heartbreaking business. And when I was 20, acting teachers would always say things like, oh, well, you shouldn't be in this if you can do anything else. And I never understood that. And I think what ended up happening is when I came back from Europe, I started writing. And I took a job as an assistant editor with Atlanta Metropolitan Publishing. And so I started interviewing people who were coming through on Broadway shows for Encore. I started going to conferences and writing about the industry for Planner meetings. There was also a travel publication, so I ended up doing a lot of the destination guides for PYM. And I just started eventually having more opportunities. And then people started wanting to hire me to come and speak. And I ended up becoming a proprietary content speaker for MPI because I'm just naturally curious about technology, and I was playing with things, and so they commissioned me to do something. And so for 18 months, I talked about meeting technologies that help you plan smarter, faster, more efficiently. And so I went to, it's once a month, I was at a different chapter meeting, or, so it just kind of was a natural progression. I didn't really have any particular focus. I just followed my curiosity, and that's kind of what happened. And it was funny because sitting down and talking to my friend Brian last night, the exact same thing. Now he develops games, New York tech startup is we want you to come and pitch this thing. And he's like, do I have to develop it first? Does it have to be, So it's interesting. But the one thing that we have in common is that, we're trained storytellers, and in this economy, that translates well to anything.
Agreed.
We both know how to communicate. So we can take our view of how to construct a story, and we can take our skills from listening, and we can take our skills of thinking on our feet and just kind of creating something out of nothing that we trained so long in. Plus, I know how to apply makeup, so I'm on camera a lot, and that comes in handy because there are a lot of women who don't know how to apply makeup.
Good, because I'm shiny. You'll have to help me later.
And that's okay, yeah, just a little powder.
All right.
A little powder, it's all right. And maybe some green base, and you can highlight and do some stuff with the planes of your face, which would be really beautiful. It's funny because people were always telling me I had to focus, but I always loved writing. I always loved graphic design. I always loved performing. And now I travel and I speak and I manage social communities, and I design the user experience for our education and for our digital assets, and, work with people developing things like augmented reality and how would you integrate that into an event experience so it makes sense. And so that's my big thing, is that I'm a big proponent of defeating random acts of marketing. And so it's a constant. And so that's.
And I'm a marketer, so I can laugh at
that. Yeah. And so that was, and I am too now. I mean, I started off as a writer. I ended up getting promoted to editorial director eventually after many years. And then because the sales staff was kind of asking for things, but not thinking it through, and then wasting money on developing things that were obsolete 6 months later, I kind of stepped into the role of VP of Creative because I was like, look, you guys need somebody who's thinking about why we're doing things and is investigating the technology. So now for Encore and Plan Your Meetings and Posh Deals, which is our third entity at Land Metro, I design everything. Like I look at, it's basically like the content, the story, and the community, and how it extends into everything from, what kind of content we put on the website and the stories that we tell on site to, what the look and the feel of the show programs are going to be, to if we have a live event, what is the flow going to be, and how do we integrate technology so people are actually experiencing and understanding the applications. So I was explaining to one of the planners here, we're going to be back in New York for our first PYM Live New York City on August 22nd. And so I was explaining to her, I was saying, we don't sit there and say, the trade show model's broken and this is how you do a better trade show. Instead, the trade show component of our event is run the way we think helps build connections better and helps facilitate business so you can experience it. And you're like, you know what? This will work for that event. So I work on creating those kind of immersive experiences. Now, did I think that was what I'd be doing when I was learning my lines and like reading Tolstoy and being like, I wish I was Kate Winslet? No, but I think that's the beauty of that kind of improv mindset, which is saying yes and accepting mistakes as gifts and learning how to build on it and just kind of see where your curiosity takes you.
Sure, we jokingly call that selling the ticket and building the airplane later. Right? You figure it out. You figure it out. You try again. You iterate. You try again. You iterate.
Yeah.
Not everyone's comfortable with that. So.
No, it's actually, and that's one thing. It's like my friend was saying. We had this big dialectical issue about people and why they are a certain way, and if it's like predestined or if it's they have free will and da-da-da. And so he was making this argument that if there's a thorn in your paw, sometimes you can't help that there's a thorn in your paw. And my argument was everyone has the ability to take the thorn out of their paw and go on. So, and he was...
Unless you're a lion.
Unless you're a lion, yeah. And then you need a mouse.
Then you need a mouse.
You need a friendly mouse. And so it was one of those things where it's like, well, I prefer to think of your ability to look at the obstacles and to deal with them as having more faith, and maybe it's a more naive view. But, in an economy like this where there is no normal, there is no the way we used to do things, like you can't send a proposal or do business or market to people the same way you did 5 years ago. And so, you can focus on, but this is the way it was working, and then have that thorn in your paw, or you can pull the plug and go on and discover what's next.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And let's leave it there because we have just a few minutes, and I want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you.
Oh, sure.
If they want to reach out and say thank you, as I will, of course. How can they find you?
Sure. On Twitter, I'm at PYM Live. We're also at Plan YR Meetings because it's too long for Twitter. But Plan Your Meetings is everywhere. Basically, like we've got a Google Plus community, and I often do hangouts that are kind of impromptu. So, like after the Boston Marathon bombing, I was like, "Hey, anybody interested in talking about this? We're doing a debate. It's going to be a private debate. Sorry, kids, about hosted by her programs and whether or not they're boondoggles tomorrow." Okay. But if you're interested in being part of those kind of industry-wide discussions, joining the Google Plus community is a good thing. So just search Google Plus for Plan Your Meetings. The Plan Your Meetings Plus community. There's also a page, of course, but the community is where I send my private invitations.
Okay.
And then Facebook. I answer Twitter much more than email. Don't ever send me an email if you want to get in touch with me.
That's good to know.
But you can always link in with me. I'm pretty good at that.
Okay. Well, I follow you on Twitter, so that's fine. I can do that.
Yeah. So PYM Live. That's my big one.
Awesome. Well, Kristi Casey Sanders. I want to make sure I get to Casey. But yeah. Kristi, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Plan well and prosper.
Awesome. And this has been the Event Tech Podcast live coverage of Plannertech 2013 in downtown New York City. Thanks for watching.